Today we're going to compare fractions with the same numerator. Just a reminder that your numerator is the number on top that tells you how many pieces you are counting from your whole, and your denominator is the number on the bottom that tells you how many equal pieces your whole was divided into. So let's compare the fractions 1/2 and 1/8. These fractions both have the same numerator of 1. When I compare them, I want to know which one is going to be bigger. When I say bigger, I don't mean which one has a bigger number, because I can see that 8 is bigger than 2. I want to know which one has more shaded in. Let's take 2 cakes. They're both the same shape and the same size. I'm going to cut the one on the left into 2 equal pieces. And the one on the right, I'm going to cut into 8 equal pieces. Since I'm comparing 1/2 and 1/8, I'm going to shade in 1 out of the 2 pieces of cake on the left and 1 out of 8 pieces of cake on the right. I can see that the piece on the left is much bigger than 1 out of 8 pieces of the cake on the right. So I would say that 1/2 is greater than 1/8. When we're comparing fractions with the same numerator, the bigger your denominator is, the smaller your piece is going to be. So think about that denominator as telling you how many people you're going to share a cake with. Would you rather share with 2 people or 8 people? Which one is going to give you a bigger slice of cake? So now let's compare 3/4 and 3/6 from your notes. It asks you to draw a picture, and we're going to draw one big rectangle and cut it in half. So now we have 2 rectangles of the same length on top of each other. I'm going to split the one on top into 4ths, and I'm going to split the one on the bottom into 6. Again, both fractions have the same numerator. So I'm going to shade in 3 out of the 4 pieces on the top and 3 out of the 6 pieces on the bottom. When I'm looking at the size of what I just shaded, I can see that this section on the top is much bigger than the piece on the bottom. So 3/4 is greater than 3/6. Again, since I have the same numerator, think of your denominator as telling you how many people you're going to share with. Would you rather share with 4 people or 6 people? In this case, when you share with 4 people, you're going to have a bigger amount. So that's why 3/4 is bigger than 3/6. Now let's compare 2/2 and 2/3. Again, draw one big rectangle and cut it in half so you have 2 rectangles of equal length on top of each other. I'm going to split the top rectangle in half and my bottom rectangle into thirds. I'm going to shade in 2/2, and then I'm going to shade in 2/3. Which one is bigger? Again, if I look at what I shaded in more on that top rectangle than I did on this bottom one. So 2/2 is greater than 2/3. And if you notice here, I have the same number on the top and bottom. So 2/2 is equal to 1. So in this case, I could have one entire cake to myself, or I could have had 2 of the 3 pieces to myself. I would much rather have one whole cake. And now let's compare 5/8 and 5/6. Again, my fractions have the same numerator on top, and I want to see which is going to give me a bigger chunk. So I'm going to draw that rectangle again, cut it in half so I have 2 rectangles of the same length on the top and bottom. I'm going to partition my top rectangle into 8ths and my bottom rectangle into 6ths. So I'm going to shade in 5/8 and 5/6. And I'm looking at how much I have shaded in, and I can see that this time my bottom chunk is bigger than this top chunk. So my fraction 5/8 is actually going to be less than 5/6. You can check yourself with the butterfly method for all of these fractions. So I can circle 8 and 5 and multiply them together. 8 times 5 is 40. And again, my answer has to be written on top. And we can multiply 5 times 6 and see that that answer is 30. Now I have 30 and 40 on top. My antennas are not the same, as we say. And since 40 is on top of the fraction 5/6, that was my greater fraction. And that's why my mouth of my alligator over here is opening up towards 5/6. So just another way to check yourself. We can go back to 2/2 and 2/3 and do the same thing to check our work. 2 times 2 is 4. That answer again goes on top. And 3 times 2 is 6. So 6 and 4 are different antennas, and 6 is my bigger number. It's above the fraction 2/2. So 2/2 is greater than 2/3. Complete the rest of the examples on your own.